Yep. Yep, that's it. It's time for the podcast. Orange Pill Podcast, Max and Stacy. Stacy, what's happening?
Well, they're stealing our memes, and that means we have two major memes stolen by two major global institutions that have failed. And we know this because they're stealing our memes. That's because we are winning. We being Bitcoin, we being President Bukele. So you had the Bank of England this week tell their people to have fun staying poor. Literally, they just told them that they're going to have to get used to a lower standard of living and stop asking for wage increases, because just because the price of all your goods and services are going up, that you shouldn't be asking for wage increases, because this is causing inflation. That's causing inflation, not them. So they tell you to have fun staying poor. And at the same time, we have the president over, the top guy over that US dollar fiat system, President Biden, just ripping off President Bukele, who is the first president of Bitcoin, right? So here you have him ripping him off by what? A coffee mug. He's selling a coffee mug on his Biden 2024 site with him with laser eyes.
Yeah, it shows you ultimately, Bitcoin just infiltrates politics, sociology, the day-to-day workings of society. It's just making inroads everywhere. Now, the have fun staying poor at the Bank of England, of course, is really remarkable, because the current chair of the Bank of England is saying that, people shouldn't, as you say, shouldn't ask for salary rises, because that's only going to cause inflation. So they should just be having fun staying poor. They shouldn't ask for salary rises. Now that the Bank of England has been printing now for a couple of decades to bail out the bankers. Remember, the reason why the Bank of England prints so much money is that it makes it easier for the speculative class to borrow cheaply and speculate on assets and to buy assets, yachts and foreign properties and things like that. And so they created a structural environment for inflation to exist. And now that it's virtually impossible to hide the fact that the Bank of England has completely destroyed the British economy, as well as other central banks, they're coming out and telling people that, we protected our class. We protected the ruling elite, and we gave them this huge multi-$100 billion gift of cheap money. But now that is trickling down ultimately to you guys, the working class in Britain. We're going to shut the spigots. We're going to say, no, you have to just get used to a lower living standard. So that's the message from the bank.
Yeah. So this is something that's been going on for a few decades, as you said, the money printing, but also the more they money print, and the more they get further away from the principles upon which not only our nations were established, like with the constitutions and the Enlightenment ideals, but also that, it was in 1971 that we went off the gold standard. And so the further and further away you get from it, and the further and further away you get from that source of your greatness that you once had, the harder it is to remember what it was that you did, how the work and the proof of work that got you to the point of having so much wealth and power, right?
Yeah, the Bank of England's new chief economist, this guy named Hugh Pill, right? He's saying it's going to be a very difficult pill for you to swallow, says Hugh Pill. Pill said a game of pass the parcel is taking place in the economy as households and companies try to pass on the higher costs. Then he goes, so somewhere in the UK,
households try to pass on the higher costs.
Yeah. So somehow in the UK, someone needs to accept that they're worse off and stop trying to maintain their real spending power by bidding up prices, whether it's higher wages or passing the energy costs through onto customers.
Yeah. The energy costs, again, like this is the collapse of faith in these institutions, and the institutions that the people no longer have faith in and they no longer trust have over the past few years become increasingly angry and aggressive about it, authoritarian about it. This is what we've seen since Trump won in 2016. I think that exposed that was kind of a have fun saying poor moment, right? Because of course Trump was enabled and, he was kind of became a sensation because of Pepe the Frog and the online memers and this new generation that no longer trusts these institutions. And then here you have this guy who, he's just spouting a lie. Not only have they printed and caused all the inflation, but their war in Europe caused the cost of natural gas to go up, and their policies to just cut off the third largest natural gas supplier in the world and the single largest commodities producer in the world, exporter in the world. So, they're the ones that decided to do that. That like the households are not the ones causing these prices.
No, Hugh Pill said that, the cost of energy and natural gas is going up. And we can't do anything about it. So we can't subsidize you, the consumer, in any way by offering some kind of energy subsidization. We're going to because we gave away all of our subsidies to the banking class and the ruling elite by giving them low interest rates and by keeping the banks' rates lower for them. So as you point out, the war in Europe is coming home to roost in Britain, and the cost of energy is going higher. And it's really, as we've been saying before, it's a passing of the baton from the 40 to 42 year bull market in the bond market, which was focused on Wall Street and the New York Fed, where the world was on a US dollar standard and everything could be dollarized. And who controlled the dollar? You could control the global economy. And then the war in Europe meant the end of that era and the beginning of the commodity era. So commodities are setting prices for energy and food and other commodities, and the global South and the East are now in charge. There's the passing of the baton, the Thucydides trap, as you've talked about it before. And the U.S. dollar is now being used less and less every single day. There's new deals being struck with countries using something other than the dollar.
Argentina, which is a big commodities producer, they're experiencing hyperinflation, of course, and collapse. But they just struck a deal with China for in yuan. They're paying I read something like 80% of all trade between Russia and China was in yuan now. So yeah, it happens slowly and then suddenly. So right now everybody's like, don't worry, don't worry. And you and I have seen that as we've reported over the years, is that people always mocked the conspiracy theorists that the dollar will always be king, right?
Yep.
And then, like, as it's happening slowly, they're saying, oh, it's just manageable. It's like slight. Who cares if it was 80% of global trade and now it's 60%? And, and then at a certain point, once it hits, there is a tipping point. We don't know what it is, but it might be like 50%. Or 49%, and then it just plunges down to like 2%.
Yeah, and let me ask you this. This would be my potted history of British history since, let's say, Thatcher. Mm-hmm. So you had the left and Labour was big for a while. And then, of course, you had the arrival of Tony Blair and this third way, which was supposed to be kind of like representative of Labour values. They called it New Labour. But it was really just conservative values dressed up in virtue signaling, or as Sam Bankman-Fried would call it, he used the right shibboleths to get in power and stay in power for a few years. And during that period of time, it put a rosy glow and a sheen on the core values of Britain. And you had pop, Britannia, and you had, the music at that time,
cool,
Oasis.
Britannia, Oasis, Pulp, Blur, all that
and
stuff.
Tony Blair was playing his guitar at number 10 Downing Street.
Yeah.
And they invited Oasis in, and they had a party and things like that. But it hid the fact that underneath it all this is a very class-ridden society that has values that go back to Dickensian times and the Victorians, where they think nothing of having a permanent underclass. And the Bank of England just comes out and says it and says, listen, you plebs, you chavs, you yobs, you just have to get used to being poor. Have fun staying poor. There is no aspirational aspirations in Britain. You're permanently going to be a yob.
Well, yeah, I mean, every country has their own sort of cultural acceptance of various class structures, and they do have a royal family and all that stuff, and they all love that. Who knows? But this is a central bank saying, have fun staying poor. They have literally jumped the Liotta shark into the Bitcoin meme world. It's just, It's just funny.
The Ray Liotta shark.
The Ray Liotta shark. Like that's the thing is like when I read that, when I read the quote and I saw her son Martinez had tweeted it, and I had to check it, right? I thought it was a joke. I thought it couldn't be real. And then it was real. So I was like, why didn't this guy just say it and do the Ray Liotta meme underneath it? Like he should have said that to the people, right? And the same thing, like when I saw that Joe Biden is selling a cup with a coffee mug with, him with laser eyes, I thought I was about to retweet it and say something. And then I was like, wait, I'm about to be one of these people that get, played by a meme or a joke from some, Bitcoiner. And then, so I went and Googled it, and it was like Biden 2024, and I went and found it, and sure enough, it's on his website. So I was like, it's like a simulation, right?
Right.
Like
So
this is too weird that they're just like.
Well, let me ask you this. So
line.
Going back to the Hillary campaign, remember she was ousted and defeated by the Pepe meme.
She was ousted by Pepe.
So is this an attempt to preempt the memosphere with coming up with a Biden meme to do battle with the memes?
Sure, of course, yeah, because they played it wrong because Hillary Clinton's people, they had her like say on the news and like wherever she was questioned, she jumped the shark. There was no Ray Liotta shark at that time, but she just jumped the shark in a like what the fuck moment, because remember she said to the world media that Donald Trump has Pepe the Frog on his side and Pepe is a Nazi, and I'm like, what the fuck? That's 4chan. And it's like how can you say a frog is on the side of a person running for president? It's a frog, and it's a meme, and it's some degenerates.
Well, that's why the social media threw politics and polling into a tizzy, because on social media metrics, it looked like something like Pepe the Frog was trending and had hundreds of millions and billions of views. And so politicians, of course, only look at the stats and they don't look at any of the context. So they just respond to those numbers without context, and they sounded like idiots because they hadn't adjusted yet to the social media at that time. Remember, this is 2016, and it was, for them, still very fresh. So here we are in 2023, getting ready for 2024, and Joe Biden is trying to position himself in social media and the meme wars by coming up with this laser eye meme. I mean, at first I thought it was lobotomy scars, right? I think that somehow they went in there and they botched a lobotomy and they ended up with bleeding eyeballs. But then I guess, okay, it's a laser meme, but it's now directly taken from the Bitcoin world. So is that what he's trying to say?
They must, well, maybe they just know it has cultural resonance with young people. They know that the laser eyes, well, like Tom Brady wore laser eyes. So they just know that these young people like laser eyes, right? And enough shitcoiners have done it. And of course, he's the president of number one shitcoin in the world, is the US dollar. So I think they probably don't know the source of it. They don't know where it comes from. And in fact, he doesn't even realize he's being subversive, okay? Because the Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, they understand the nature of those laser eyes because, of course, they mock President Bukele for it. So you could see all the headlines. If you Google Bukele laser eyes, you'll see they were all mocking this crypto bro president and his laser eyes.
Right. So he's trying to get a halo effect with Bukele's laser eye memes by coming up with laser eyes, because they see that Bukele is the most popular politician in the world by a huge margin. So they're trying to tap into that in the meme world, seemingly.
They just know it is cool, and they don't know the source of that coolness. But that's what I said as well I did a tweet stream about this. I said President Bukele is by far the most popular elected leader in the world, and this is why the president of the United States is now copying him by donning Bitcoin laser eyes. And then I said this is the proof of stake mindset. They see greatness and they desire it, but they are not willing to work to achieve it, right? So they just in the altcoin world, they add blockchain to their token and their white paper, and they think that's going to create perfect money. nor will putting laser eyes on a mediocre politician ever make a great leader out of Joe Biden.
No, I was just trying to locate your tweet stream on Twitter, and you did a breakdown
If
of
you go
this.
to twitter.com/Stacy Herbert,
Yeah.
my name is spelled Stacy, Max.
Right. No, but the
HERBERT.
connection here is not great. So here you have the mug at Stacy Herbert's Twitter
You
account.
call me a mug? Thanks.
What?
Like, what the heck?
Hey, man, you misinterpreted me. You're memeing me. You're memeing me. So President Bukele is by far the most popular elected leader in the world. And so here you have the mug. You have the laser eye mug. He's trying to rip him off. And, the proof of stake mindset you get into in this thread, which is one we always see now. People just try to glom on to what's successful without putting in the work.
Well, the proof of stake mindset is very kind of similar, you could say, to the cargo cult that we've talked about.
Yeah.
So, we've talked about the cargo cult many times in many episodes of all our shows across the years. And the cargo cult was that story of, during World War II in the Pacific Islands, this remote island that had never been visited by modern technology. First, they had the Japanese, Air Force arrive, build a runway, and, start landing some cargo planes and stuff like that. And then the U.S. military, the U.S. Air Force took over during the course of the war. And here the locals saw all these advanced technology arriving. And of course, on the runway were the guys waving the lights and whatever to signaling how to land, and bringing in all these goods and like magic, all this stuff arrived. So when they just disappeared one day, and they still had the runway and the tower there and the signals,
Yeah.
and nothing would arrive. So finally they just went out and started like waving like that and seeing if like that would bring in these planes and land.
Yeah, no
these kids.
context. So Joe Biden's putting on laser eyes to think that it's going to attract voters
Yes,
because
exactly.
it's a cargo cult.
Yes, because President Bukele has popularity rating of over 90%. President Biden has one under 40%. So he's like, if I could get to 90%, if I put on laser eyes like President Bukele, he doesn't want to do the work. He doesn't
No.
want to have the leadership. He doesn't want to have the policies. He doesn't want to do any of the stuff that actually got President Bukele to get to the point where he could put on laser eyes and not be laughed at by the memosphere. Like
Right.
Biden obviously will not be accepted by the memosphere. They will not be putting him in any Liotta memes.
Hey, speaking of Stacy Herbert's Twitter feed, you tweeted something else here, which is really fascinating about artists selling their back catalogs. Catalogs.
Yeah. This is with Brian Romilly.
Yeah.
Right.
And so this has to do with AI and the emergence of AI. And things are changing rapidly in that world. And you tweeted about how artists have sold their back catalogs. And that was certainly, we've seen Bruce Springsteen sold all of his art, back catalog, et cetera. And they're big
Recently,
deals.
Bob Dylan, Fleetwood Mac.
But where could this lead astray for them?
Well, obviously David Bowie was the first to sell his back catalog, like with the Bowie bond long ago, like 15 years ago. And
1990s.
okay, maybe so a lot longer ago. And that was like early innovator, okay? And he saw the future as being one where the price point would trend to zero and people would download things for free digitally. But what he didn't see was AI and what these amazing new creations they're coming up with, right? And these songs, especially if they have the voice and the sort of technique of the poetry of the songwriter. And you enter in all this information so you could start to say, do a song like David Bowie doing this, it's able to come up with quite brilliant songs.
Right. So they're
Remixed.
pricing that catalog based on trends, like that based on plays and radio plays and streams. And it's very linear in that sense. And what was not determined and thought about at the time was it come AI, and you can literally have David Bowie create new songs, and you can have Bob Dylan, and you can have Johnny Cash, and these people create new songs based on the algorithms and their voices and their tendencies and their cultural zeitgeist and their placement. And you can have Bob Dylan doing a very new song duet with Frank Sinatra. And both of those catalogs of intellectual property. And Brian Romilly is talking about you need to have intellectual property rights being very defined so that people can figure out how to price all this stuff. But if Bruce Springsteen, who just sold his catalog of music for like 150 or 200 million dollars, but not figuring on that actually there could be however many songs are in his catalog, let's say that there's 500, there could be now 5,000.
Well, I mean, it would be interesting to look at the small print on those contracts because of Star Wars, there's a lot of crazy small print in Hollywood movie contracts, right? So
because of the merchandise.
The merchandising. That's what famously happened with Star Wars is George Lucas said something like, yeah, I'll take just $1 million for this, but I'll keep the merchandising rights. And, Columbia Pictures looked through their, their back catalog of any films that they like or MGM or whatever made it, like that all these great films they had made, and they made like less than that on their merchandise. And they're like, okay, it's no big deal. So, of course, it made like billions of dollars, and that's why George Lucas is very wealthy. But since then, they add in all these crazy things. Like the contract is very long. It's like, we own the merchandise
in this
universe, other galaxies, string theory, like wherever
every
parallel
possible
universes.
But I bet you that's a good question, though. I mean, do they have an AI clause? Yeah. Since AI was not really around during that time, it's quite possible that they don't have these AI clauses. And to your point, they could have made a colossal mistake in selling this stuff way too early. Yeah. And whoever bought the Michael Jackson catalog, who paid an exorbitant amount of money for it, or Elvis Presley, at the time thinking like, wow, that's an enormous amount of money. They'll never get their money back. I mean, now it looks like it could have been the biggest bargain ever.
And there's the other thing is that there's now probably a way to do perpetual copyright is that, like Happy Birthday is now in the public domain after 75 plus years, whatever. So I think, however, if you could just get to the exact beat or, just one, like the exact amount to basically say it's a new song and keep it always like your kind of original creation in the copyright domain by changing enough, but not enough so that it's always like the AI could probably figure, like keep the same sort of thing, but always like keep you in the public in under copyright by changing it just enough. You know how like pharmaceutical, basically it's the pharmaceutical thing applied to music and intellectual property, right? Because pharmaceutical industry, what they do is they like change the formula slightly and then they like reapply, extend the patent and trademark.
Well, that guy Sheehan is his name. I forget his first name, but he's a pop singer, very successful. Ed Sheeran. And he's actually in a copyright case this week where he was someone's challenging him that his song was ripping off another song. But in terms of changing slightly to create a variation on that song, I mean, as I understand it, what we're talking about here is the actual number of songs you can create based on the harmonic scale and various other scales and beats and time measures is some astronomical number. I forget, my music teacher in high school once put it on the blackboard and said, this is the number of songs you can actually create. And it was like unbelievable big number.
It's like Shaw 256.
It's like Shaw 256, man, and so the song by this new song, I mean, it doesn't have to have any similarity at all to any song ever made, but it's being sung by Elvis Presley in his style, with his emphasis, with his signature style. Yeah. And it's a new song.
Yeah. Okay. So I think Elvis Presley estate did sell his actual image rights, right? So
they sold the Elvis Presley estate. They sold the whole kit and caboodle, right? His image, his music, the whole thing went off.
It's hard to tell. Like if they could just come up with new songs by Elvis Presley,
completely new songs.
Like who? Yeah. Like,
so what about a hologram of Elvis Presley? He steps on the Broadway theater stage in New York City and he sings 45 minutes of songs we've never heard before, and he's doing dance moves we've never seen before. People would pay to see that.
Well, I mean, like Da Vinci and Michelangelo could program those in to recreate those, or can they? So,
Well,
that's the thing, is like, it's the moment, right?
Well, this gets into a whole conversation about what is art.
Yeah.
And is it reproducible? It also gets into there's a famous book by Walter Benjamin called the art of seeing, or seeing is the art, or he was the guy, a German sociologist, I guess, and he was talking about how the window of retail stores displaying their goods was the beginning of like mass consumption, where products became the thing and beyond their utility value. And the something of seeing, Walter Benjamin, he's a famous sociologist.
The art of seeing?
Not the art of seeing, something, but and it just goes also, the discussion about photography is about, is photography art? Are you just snapping the finger? Remember the case a couple of years ago where the monkey took a photo and said, who owns the photo? The monkey took the photo. Legally, the monkey owns the photo. And the guy who owned the camera saying, no, it's my photo, I own the camera. But of course, that's wrong. The monkey took the photo, and it's the monkey's photo. If the monkey could hire a lawyer, then that guy who says it's his photo would be sued and put out of business. But nevertheless, so what is art? And then it crosses over into Lawrence Lessig, who of course argues that all intellectual property law should be more or less abandoned, and everything should be completely in the open and free domain. And
well, that seems quite obvious, that art is not spontaneous, right? It doesn't erupt out of nothing.
Right.
It erupts out of everything around you in the moment. That's what I'm saying, is like, it's a response to everything around you. So they can't, I mean, maybe AI can. I don't know. If you input all the history books, you can't really, because like AI can't smell, right? So they can't feel. So think of that with Renaissance Florence. They had just come out of the bubonic plague, like killed half the population. You don't know the smells of the city. You don't hear the noises of the city. Like all that stuff, like, is input. All your senses are receiving all this information of everything around you.
Yeah. Just a quick side note here. So the book is called The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. And it's Walter Benjamin. He's a German Jewish philosopher, cultural critic, and essayist. He was born in 1892, died in 1940. Apparently, he died suicide by morphine overdose. The classic ending to a heavy thinker there. He made enduring and influential contributions to aesthetic theory, literary criticism, and historical materialism associated with the Frankfurt School. And his best known works are The Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. And it talks about, he's also into mysticism. And this is a guy who was really ahead of his time, really ahead of Marshall McLuhan, I would say. Walter Benjamin predates Marshall McLuhan and his ideas about media.
Well, even like you said, he overdosed on morphine. Being a German Jew in 1940, I'm sure it was you're responding to the world around you, and it's obviously a pretty dire situation, which is a bit of an understatement. So, yeah, that's what I'm saying, is like, everything is an input. We're just ciphers, right? And we're like part of this simulation, this matrix of information flowing through us. And some of us could, the input comes in and it goes out this way. Most people are NPCs. It just goes straight through them without doing much.
So to get to your point, let's say the Picasso and those guys are in Paris, they're in Montmartre, and they're all painting, but it's the atmosphere of the time. Toulouse-Lautrec, all those people, there's all that, you smell the paint. It's that oil paint. They're on the street.
It's the people, their conversation.
And you can't recreate that exact moment.
The conversations they all had collectively in the cafe, the prostitutes in the streets, and the wars that had gone on, the World War I, like going to the front line and stuff like that.
So AI has a limitation then, because it can't really capture that exact moment. It can only simulate that exact moment.
You don't know which one of those bits is the one that created the moment. Was it, it was like wars, financial crises. Each war is unique and different. Each smell of Paris at that time might have been as stinky as it is now. Who knows? But like everything, you don't know was it a smell? Was it some boulangerie that opened that caused, like, it could be, it's like one last straw that created, like, why there is something magical that happens. As what we've always talked about is like, why the Enlightenment, why the Renaissance, why ancient Greece? What exactly caused this like spark? What was the one little spark that ignited it? And it's always like the Frankfurt School. There's like some city, there's some, it's never like a movement caused by a random guy out in like South Dakota in the middle of nowhere, right? It's like a collection of people, usually in a city, that are coming together, having conversation, and the city is filled with a cacophony of all sorts of sounds and smells and noises and anxieties and intellectuals and pain in the asses and all sorts of things, and then it disappears. then it moves on to another city.
Right. And, with art, of course, when the finished painting comes off the brush and it's on the wall, for the artist, that's the end of the journey.
Yes.
For those who are viewing the art, it's the beginning of their journey.
Yes.
But for the artist, when they finish that art, that's the end. It's for them. The original thrill that you have watched seeing that art, they had in conceptualizing that art.
Yeah.
So when they looked at the blank page, they had an experience that you will have looking at the finished art, but they had it on the blank page. So how they got that to that blank page, and to your point, what was the spark? What was the moment? Was it a baguette that they smelled? Was it, or, this is the whole thing about Proust, right? Remembrance of things past. I believe it's a 17 volumes set of books by Proust where he's like just talking about breakfast for like 5,100 million words, essentially, right? So it's a rumination on this exact topic that goes on and on and on and on. I've never Remembrance of Things Past by Proust. I've never read it in either the French or the English. It sounds horrible.
Only French people must have read
Only
it.
French people would possibly read it.
That explains the French people. If you've ever been there, they will just drone on and on and on and on about something that they say is philosophical. And you're like, I don't need to know why that croissant sucked. Like, I don't know, but there must be a reason for it to be so bad. It's
Right.
like,
Imagine a nation filled with Larry Davids, and that's France.
yeah. Yes. Yes. That's right.
It's 67 million Larry Davids walking around complaining about everything. That's France.
Well, today, I mean, I did say that these great moments happened in these cities and these physical spaces. And yet we're like all online now, right? We're on Twitter, and then even then, like there's city states within Twitter or on Twitter. So you have Bitcoin Twitter, and then you have, you have shitcoin, you have crypto Twitter that tries to, like, they steal all our memes, right? But definitely it's weird that there's no physical space, but to be let onto Bitcoin Twitter, there is like a gate, right? There are like certain people that are accepted on there and then certain people who aren't. So these are sort of virtual cities.
Yeah, there's definitely that virtual city. And, but I think that what we're saying here is that the catalog of an artist, and it's remixed and new songs are created from AI, that it's going to really not be aesthetically satisfying as the original. It'll sound and look,
Yes.
but it won't. So in other words, what art is it can move you emotionally from one place to another. Yeah. So when people see an artwork and they have this emotional and it's moved them to some place, that's what art does. That's what art can do. If a bad art or a kitsch or schlock is stuff where you look at it and you're not moved at all. If you look at commercial art, if you looked at the golden arches of McDonald's, you do not have an emotional experience unless you are, a very select few of people who are moved by that.
Well, that's what my Twitter thread was about. It's like greatness is hard work. Great minds or great people, they make it look easy. But there is a magic. When they say magic internet money, which Bitcoin we used to call back in the early days, it seems so easy and like weird and magic, and like the sort of reaction to, say, President Bukele is like that sort of anger and jealousy. Like there's a real jealousy, right? Like, why is that guy popular? Why not me? Like, I'm going to put on laser eyes like him and maybe I'll be popular. That there's that sort of sense of like when that magic happens, when Tom Brady could be great as a quarterback. Like there's an envy that like he makes it look so easy. Like he comes off the field after winning a Super Bowl and there's no sweat. And he's like, hey, how's it going? And you're like, what the hell? So there's a certain, it's hard to describe, je ne sais quoi, there's a certain thing that happens with greatness. But it's hard work. Da Vinci, famously in his last days in France, he was, not as in good health anymore. And he was apparently just filled with despair about that he had wasted his life and he had done nothing with it. Like this is like that he had been given a talent by God. And what did he do but write in his stupid little notebooks, and like, this is just a waste of time that I've done. Like, and it was like he felt like a loser, and that he hadn't worked enough, he hadn't proved anything, and yet obviously
he felt like an underachiever.
Yeah, apparently.
On his deathbed.
Yeah.
Well, I think that that kind of perennial pain in the creator's soul is common. That they have this need to create that's never satisfied, and you see that in artists as well. And with Bukele, you're right. I mean, everyone is trying to figure out what the magic formula is. Like,
yes.
How does he do it? And I think in the case of Biden, they put all that data into a computer and an AI bot, and they said, okay, what's the magic formula of Bukele? And they came out with make a meme with Biden and laser eyes.
Yeah.
That came out of the other end of the computer.
Yeah.
And it doesn't reflect any work, and it's not going to in any way going to work. And it just shows you that they're just lazy and they're not willing to really understand the context of what's going on. And also shows that their facility with just believing all the lies and the FUD around, let's say, Bukele and all these other things that they aspire to be like are usually shrouded in some controversy. And they want to know, they want to know why these things are successful, but they don't want to pierce the veil of the FUD that a lot of these things are encased in. Case in point would be Kaizen report. People mimic it. They love it. It's encased in a shroud of controversy. So they don't want to go past that. Certainly not in the United States. But other countries did, and they learned about Bitcoin when it was $5, and a lot of people became millionaires as a result of it because they were willing to do the work to get through the FUD and just listen to what we were saying, but not so in the U.S., where the Cold War and the hot war was still raging and was preventing people from getting past their own biases into the truth of their own being, as it is, as such.
And well, as we wrap up, I want to say maybe this AI is advancing so fast. Like, it's pretty crazy. I haven't tried any of this chat GPT things because I'm kind of scared of where like the rabbit hole might take me down. But nevertheless, like maybe as an incumbent in that space, like they could just keep recreating these things. For people like Madonna who don't want to age,
Right.
she could just keep recreating, her sort of videos and her performances from her when she was in her 20s or 30s. And maybe that might make her happy.
Well, everyone thinks they want to be immortal.
Yeah.
But if that's true, then it destroys the meaning of life. Life only has value because of death. And if you remove death, then life has no value because there's no constraint. There's no high time preference. There's no urgency. There's no sense of urgency whatsoever. You're just basically a blob. You're a jellyfish in the sea of immortality and basically saying and doing nothing. You're an insect. So, I mean, without death, life doesn't exist. So those who achieve greatness, like Steve Jobs, would say, you only have one life. Time is limited. It's your most precious commodity. Get it on. Do what you need to do. Now, if he was going to be and there was no time constraint and you had the next 1,000 years to figure out what you want to do, you would just eat Fritos all day and never get out of bed.
Well, Da Vinci's immortal. Michelangelo's
Well, not in the physical
immortal.
realm. I mean, they created work that has
Well,
stood the test of time.
that's the question with AI. What is a person? Who is conscious? What is consciousness? And what is the essence of a person? And can he live on? He does. They like.
But you
the
just said on his deathbed, he felt like a failure.
It was a death of his physical being, but he's immortal, isn't he? Because they'll still be talking about Leonardo in 500 years.
His notebooks were lost for hundreds of years.
Yeah, but nevertheless, they still talk about him. So they'll talk about him if there's still a world here, some giant meteor doesn't hit us and wipe us all out like the dinosaurs or.
Well, there's certainly enough Max and Stacy material out there in the metaverse and the multiverse to create Max and Stacy shows.
Metaverse.
No, that
my
was the
God.
meme is
Oh my
already
God,
dead.
Oh my God.
Oh, I've aged myself. I was thinking from 6 months ago.
Okay. Well, this episode will be immortal. It'll be playing somewhere 1,000 years from now in some parallel universe. But you know what? Our contract says we own the copyright on that in that parallel dimension. So if you're listening to this in that dimension right now, you owe us a few pennies or whatever the currency is. I suppose it's Satoshis.
Yeah.
In the parallel dimension as well.
Like Satoshis, you can take them with you. I mean, that's the immortality is you can take Satoshis with you after you shed this mortal coil into the afterlife. You can take it with you if you own Bitcoin. Oh yeah, baby. So let's skedaddle and head out to the street and see what's happening in San Salvador. Bye, y'all.